Ithike Gunter, a unique new narrative voice, was mentored by acclaimed playwright Philip Rademeyer, who took her through her paces to write a full-length short story. Ithike's innovative story about meeting a legendary character, combined with the passing of the narrator's mother, makes for a narrative that conjures up beautiful visual imagery that surrounds the central darkness of Nika's journey. You can follow this story in one of two ways. One, you can mute the sound and read the story out loud yourself. Or two, you can listen and follow the text as I read Ithike's beautiful words. Shadows and Flower Fields by Ithike Gunter. A timer goes off. The sound of years run out reverberates through me in this otherwise silent place. A line between life and death is drawn on a screen, a machine's hum turned into a scream. The ringing becomes an explosion, sending shards flying towards my body and pushing me to the ground. Hurt turns my vision red, but I force my focus to the screaming machine. I will my limbs to move, rising unsteadily, and grapple for the side of the bed as my world topples. My eyes fight the dread in me and look up, even though I know all too well what they will see. A face run out of minutes, a clock reset, a pendulum frozen by rust. I look into a face that should be none of these things, yet someday inevitably would be. Shock and regret double me over, threatening to knock me back down. Her cheeks turn hollow, and her eyes stare back at me, turning grey as the ocean in them dries up. The mouth that sang lullabies turns into a line, mimicking the monitor to my right. The monitor stands mockingly, intrudes in this moment of too little time. My moment. My mother's last moment. The emotion in my eyes turns from panicked regret into an anger that engulfs me, until I find myself bent over, breathless. The monitor shattered against a wall, glass scattering the floor like shrapnel, and my hands the color of my anger. The sight of my bloodied hands sickens me. The contrast between their color and my mother's grey too stark. The room feels claustrophobic, loss and chaos compressing my lungs, and a need to escape takes over, pulling the strings of my limp body and moving me until I find myself in the hospital bathroom. Disinfectant fills my nose, the smell harsh as it eats through the plaque of panic forming over my mind. The chemical smell of hospital corridors turns into the scent of scrapes from a playground being gently washed away by my mother's hands. And when I look in the mirror, I'm no longer 19, but 6 years old again. Ribbons flying and giggles weaving a chorus of innocence. My feet form a hopscotch rhythm that fills the air. Suddenly a new beat joins, filling the gaps between mine, and I laugh, ecstatic at the idea of a new friend, one with even more ribbons than me, tightly coiled white ones. Hopscotch turns into races, and we run until it's time for her to go. I'm left alone, the pavement under my legs cooling as I sit in front of the house. My eyes lift from chalk figures to the horizon where the sun dips. When I look down again, my breath becomes ragged, my frantic heart deafening everything except the voice talking to me. A boy sits next to me, a nest of midnight topping his head, spilling into his eyes that seem to swallow light, yet spark with energy. Funny, I think. They remind me of dragonflies, constantly zipping back and forth, always searching. Sharp lines carve his face, his grey-ringed eyes underlined by jutting cheekbones that contrasted with his honey-glazed voice. He cannot be more than 3 years older than me. Yet as he speaks, his voice seems to possess the knowledge of eternities. Words echo into my bones as they rush through lips tainted deep red, a color that reminds me of ripe pomegranate seeds. Or is it closer to blood? Oh, hello. Do you want a new friend? That one only has a few more years to live. But I'll be your new friend, he repeats, speaking in rapid-fire words, holding up a hand for me to shake. Cold creeps through my body, paints shivers on my arms as we touch, and I quickly retrieve my hand. No, that's Emmy. She's the best, and she'll live happily forever. is my quick reply. Oh yes, she will be happy, but eventually she will make you sad, and I don't want you to be sad, Nika. I will be your new friend. How do you know my name? You act strange for a boy. Without warning, he's gone, called away by the dark from which he came. My head spins, unsure if people appearing out of nowhere is even possible in real life. I run inside, my laughs replaced by questions. A rainbow dress is replaced by my orange cardigan, thin by all the moments it has worn, and the mirror glances back at me, returns me to reality. My hands grip the sink in front of me, the skin on my knuckles turn to the bone-white color under it, and I relax them, feeling myself uncoil along with the muscles in my arms. With stuttering hands, I open the tap and start rinsing the blood and anger of the monitor from my hands. My lungs are incapable of catching air between my tears. My chest rises and falls haphazardly. My knees crumble, unable to support my body any longer as it floods with panic, and the floor swallows me as I collapse. There is comfort in the solidity of the tiles under me, and I try and focus on them, but even that seems futile. The thunderclouds in my head still darkening the rest of the world, refusing to clear. I lift my hands to catch my head as I feel every muscle dissolve in panic, and the long sleeve of my ill-fitting cardigan sweeps up, sending a scent into the air, its surprise punching me in the gut. The punch isn't painful, but rather a welcome distraction. I focus on that fragrance, one of hours filled with paintbrushes mixed with that of her favorite flowers. I focus on the voice carried by the orange threads of the cardigan, and listen intently for my mother's laugh as she tells stories of giants and talking flowers. Just breathe. You won't hear what the flowers are saying with your heart beating this loudly, she would say, and I would calm down, waiting for her to tell me what they said, because to my mom, even the sagging, half-naked trees had something to tell. Is that one sad? I would ask, pointing at a ghostly poplar, wondering how much time it had left, whether it feared its end. Breathe, Nika. Let go, and you'll hear it answer. I breathe in, and the sound of racing lungs slowing down fills my ears, the cold of the tiles erasing the flowers I saw moments ago. The cardigan's cuffs stay wrapped around my fists, my raw palms sheltered, and I keep the memory of my mom's voice dancing through flowers in my mind as I stand up. I walk away from the disinfectant smell of hospital bathrooms, past rooms I was blind to earlier, some filled with a happy gurgle of new life, some only by white sheets pulled up too far. My hands clench tighter, and I walk faster, determined to keep clear of the suffocating thoughts triggered by places like this. The threshold of my mom's room locks me in the doorway, digging into my feet, as I stand on this uncomfortable cliff edge instead of entering the room where my mom lies. A nurse rushes past me into the hallway, but turns back with a concerned look. I force the corners of my mouth upwards to reassure her, willing her to stay at a distance, not wanting him to appear along with her, a handful of pomegranate seeds always keeping his hands busy. My eyes follow her as she continues far away, and my lungs ache to follow. But leaving in these last moments with my mom would be selfish. At her bedside, I take her hand, the lines of where she's been and the moments she's lived stained by the paint she so loved. I trace each line, portraits of our memories filling my mind when the voice of a dark, syrupy lake meets my ears. My heart stumbles, my lungs clenched by the dark standing on the other side of the bed, where he has no place being, but inevitably has every right to be. Aren't there a million other places that require your services? The words scratch out of my raw throat. His jagged shoulders cut upwards through the air, and he reaches to me like a healer instead of the destructor he is. You know better than to think I'd leave you an island in this difficult time. I turn my back on him, walking to the chair facing the window, where I see a mom holding balloons. the little girl beside her shadowed by a drip stand. My puzzlement at his comforting manner turns to irritation, a flame eating through me as I spin back to face him. You could have taken me. A life for a life, right? My words turn to embers. Their flicker slower, but their burn 100 times worse. As I hurl myself at him, a ball of confusion and anger, but mostly guilt. You could have taken me. It could have worked. His voice is soothing, a soft glow ill-fitted to the shadow that came to steal the brightest light from my life. You know it doesn't work like that. It didn't work with that lovely friend of yours. I really am sorry that I don't make the rules. You knew this day was coming, but I don't blame you for trying. The truth in his words pushed the fire out of my lungs, and without it, I'm left tired, as guilt gnaws through me and breaks me down, my head left hanging. I knew this day would come, but a life is a life, and mine would always replace hers. My words echo through a room gone too still, and a bitter laugh escapes me as I look up to see no trace of the midnight that faced me moments before. The river I left in the bathroom sink burns behind my eyes, and I feel my breath falter into a whisper. I reach for the ancient earphones and Walkman pasted with neon stickers lying on the nightstand, and crumple into the chair. I fumble for the play button, eager to be someplace else, regardless of which song will offer my escape. You're the best friend that I ever had. You've been with me such a long time. Queen lyrics fill my ears, and I'm taken from this horrid place to an arcade, warm lights casting rainbows on every surface, speakers blaring, and karaoke mic in hand. Ribbons dance in front of my eyes, mixing with the lights, and Emmy is twirling around in front of imaginary fans. I laugh unguardedly, the laugh reserved only for my best friend. I blink, hammering the forward button on the Walkman. My breath jumps, catching on the tears in my throat as I realize that I've been here before. I've stood next to the body before. I've held a tired grey hand before. I've tried bargaining with the dark. Only last time it wasn't my mom. Last time it was a car crashing into sirens and lights. Icicles spread over me and pierce my skin as I stand over a grave, like so many times before. I feel my weight tip as I look down, disbelief threatening to suffocate me as earth suffocates a body no longer needed. I focus on the white blossom between my fingers and stare at it until I can almost see it lilt as it absorbs the dark on everyone's faces. I force myself to release the flower and watch as it lands with the rest of them on a shiny black casket. She would have hated it. I almost smile as I hear her animated voice whisper in my ear. Black? Oh, how original of them. Please, Nikki, come decorate this hideous thing at night, or better yet, paint it neon blue. And bring me my Walkman. Do it, or I'll haunt you. I think of my best friend, how even death couldn't trump her mischief, and chuckle softly. The secret laugh between her and me is interrupted, stolen by the sound of a body behind me. This is Emmy. She'll live forever. A voice sorrowful and low. How beautiful. The youthful sentiment of immortality. But I told you, none of your friends will last. No one does. My head feels too heavy for my body and I sway again. But I force myself to look at the shadow I could never shake. How can he take so much light and sincerely feel bad about it? The anger and mistrust that always accompany him rises in me. So you came to gloat, to tell me you were right because you had an afternoon off. His face takes on a stricken look, his voice hardening in a way I've never heard, not in the eternity we've spent together, and the lines of his face sharpen, cut with a deathlier blade than usual. Time off. Ha! Your ignorance is not a good quality. I am always right. I expect you should have learnt that by now. I don't take glee in my job, or boast. Boasting is for those who rely on chance. The words sicken me, His presence squeezes the breath out of my lungs. I turn away from him, this thief who taints every memory. I'd rather look at the flowers trying their best to brighten a lightless day. I focus on anything except the ghost that I still feel behind me, but his words etch themselves into my head. I am always right. The song ends and the tape catches. My escape runs out. The sudden silence bringing me back to the chair facing the window, cramps tracing up my back from sitting here for so long. I remove the earphones and am immediately dragged out of grogginess by the scuffle of nurse's shoes. I snap around in the chair, bewildered, my heart starting to run too fast for my breath to keep up. Are you okay, hun? I know you must have questions. This cannot be easy for you. My mouth stays closed, as I will her to go before he can appear next to her. She smiles softly, all tired lines. You can stay as long as you need. I'm alone again, standing next to the hospital bed, holding onto my mom's hand. I hold my breath, willing her to hold on, to stay with me. But the machines are callous in their answer, their straight lines final and unmoving. She's gone, and staying isn't an option for her anymore. A wave of nausea fills me, a blow to my stomach as I realize that I should have stayed with her when I had the chance, instead of expecting her to stay now. I take off my mom's orange cardigan, remove its warm embrace from my shoulders, and lay it over her. My final way of staying. My last chance to let her know that I'm sorry, that I'm choosing to stay with her this time. My fingers refuse to let go of the cardigan, threaded with memories too precious to leave behind. I didn't stay last time. The last time I was faced with a hollow body and a shiny casket, I ran. 19 years of knowing when the clock will stop ticking, when the sickening smell of pomegranate seeds will waft from behind me, and when a pale hand will fold over a life. That knowledge had formed a cage around me, one that I needed to escape. 4 years ticked away in an apartment without light or laughter, or another life touching mine. I hid from the suffocating hands that clasped around my heart every time a clock threatened to stop ticking. I locked myself in a different cage, a safe one where his shadow couldn't find me, where he couldn't darken every memory made, or make my breath turn into a wisp. An empty darkness sheltered me, record players and music my only companions capable of speech. Songs filled empty corners, doing their best to spill their life and color into my darkness. A Walkman carrying more memories than songs constantly with me, a shadow much preferred to the one I ran from. Old sculptures traced lines through the shadows of every room, their grooves familiar, my mom still present in this way. Because her carvings and brushstrokes were safer than her heartbeat, which served as a constant reminder of an immovable expiry date. Orange burst through the black I lived in. A cardigan and blinks of a flower field the only thing allowed to hold me. Its threads knit me to the life I couldn't bear to live next to, because I knew the orange threads I borrowed from her would last longer than her breath would. Survival was made easier by the lack of lives bumping into mine. But one life kept brushing my shoulder, its light and laughter breaking my shell. Letters left unopened stared at me, the address on the envelopes painted in her brushstrokes. Opening them would mean allowing myself to think of home, the thoughts that brought storms of regret and uncertainty that threatened to drown me. Sundays meant a phone ringing, a mom begging her daughter to return home, until slowly, the pleas only came on Christmases, birthdays, and finally one on the day that would pull me out of safety. Knowledge of a nearing date shaking the wall that I built, exposing me. My grip loosens, the orange of flower fields and paint splatters released from my hand. With nothing to hold, My hand begins to shake. The thought of 4 years thrown away because of fear sends quakes through me. How did I allow a shadow to come between me and the only person I had left? I feel myself unravel. Pieces chipped away as what-ifs blur out everything else. When I'm back in a flower field, ribbons flying, my mum's voice next to me. Breathe, Nika. Let go. I know that even though I'll hold her in my memory forever, I can't hold her hand for as long. I force myself to turn around, to move away from the pain of the broken monitor, the merciless questions, the tired body. I let go. The threshold doesn't hold my feet this time, and my lungs aren't trapped in a whisper. I walk out of the room, away from the thunderclouds and shadows it held, but not before a black silk voice turns me around. Once again, it's only me, and you. I'm the only one that stays. I've been trying to show you that. We are constant companions. Midnight fills the chair where I sat, looking at me, a challenge in his eyes. He's right. He will always be there. But I'm done running from a shadow that will always catch up. He's wrong about one thing. I would rather walk with the pain mixed between the orange flower fields and neon lights than walk alone with only him by my side. I hold his gaze one final time. Goodbye, death.